Good evening, and welcome to the public forum concerning the Stearns County sales tax referendum that will be on the November ballot to fund construction and bonding for the proposed Stearns County Justice Center. This forum is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of the St. Cloud area and is being recorded. It will be made available later on the League of Women Voters of the St. Cloud area website, LWVSCA.org. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. We take no position on this referendum. We sponsor public forums because we believe informed citizens are the foundation of democracy. I am Ralph Carr, and I will be moderating this event. Before introducing our first speaker, we need to take care of a couple of housekeeping items. Please silence your cell phones and other electronic devices. Also, at the end of the presentations, there will be a question and answer period. As with all of our public forums, we take questions in writing from the audience on index cards. If you have not received an index card, or if you need an extra card, please raise your hand and one of our helpers will bring one to you. When you wish to submit a question, raise your hand and one of our helpers will deliver it to the question facilitators at the front of the room. Thank you for attending tonight's event. We will now begin the proceedings. Our first speaker tonight is Ms. Tarryl Clark, Chairperson of the Stearns County Board of Commissioners. Ms. Clark will introduce us to an overview of this project and speak to us about the process the county board used to bring this project to its current state. Ms. Clark, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Ralph. Really appreciate being here today. I think some of this we'll probably end up doing kind of passing down the row, as it were. As Ralph said, I'm Tarryl Clark. I'm chairing the Stearns County Board of Commissioners this year. You happen to be in my district right now. This is the part of the area that I represent. One of my fellow board members, Joe Persky, is also here, so I just wanted to make sure everybody got to see him. And then tonight, as far as our panel goes, our presentation, we have Mike Williams, who's our administrator, Janelle Kendall, the Stearns County attorney, Sheriff Steve Soyka, our sheriff, Randy Schreifels, the Auditor-Treasurer, Captain Maslonkowski is the jail captain's in the back, as well as Kevin Korneck, who's our facilities director. So you've got a lot of different wealth and experience in here. From a pretty short place as we're getting going, as we're starting to move through this, want you to be looking at this with a mind towards, we have mandated buildings and services that, to be redundant, we're required to do, right? So court facilities, sheriffs, the law enforcement center, as well as the jail. Those are mandated. The state does not help pay for any of this. And that cost is borne by taxpayers. It is not something we take lightly. So I want you, as you're going along, to hopefully see that we are looking for ways to be as cost effective, safe, and as least burdensome on your pocketbook, because this is paid for with taxpayer dollars. The question in front of voters this fall, as you saw, will be whether or not this gets paid for with a sales tax that can be spread to others who spend resources in our county. So I'm going to go ahead and kick off a few of the first slides, and then I'm going to hand it over to Sheriff Soyka, and then to Attorney Kendall, where you're going to hear a bit more about specifically about what some of our needs are. Dr. Williams and Mr. Schreifels will get to some of the other important parts about the costs, etc. of this project. So there we are again. So we'll have this brief presentation, and then, as Ralph said, the league has passed out cards for you to write down questions. So, quick history. This is the part that Ralph was referring to, you'll see all the way back over 100 years ago. The historical courthouse is over 100 years now. It is gorgeous. Joe and I just got to see the newest judge invested on Friday, one of Janelle's former attorneys. He is fabulous. It's a gorgeous building, but it was built for a different time. You'll see in '86, this is just in case for some of you who might not be able to see in the back, there was a law enforcement center with a jail with 97 beds included. Fast forward to 91, a courts facilities building was added. In 95, the jail consistently had been reaching full capacity. You're going to hear more from Sheriff Soyka about some of these challenges, but some more beds were added then. Fast forward again, double bunks were put in to try to, on that same space, to try to go ahead and make sure that we could increase the capacity. Janelle's going to talk to you a bit more about our Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee, which is something that is shared with many local partners, that we have made several efforts to try to reduce needs. Really, in many ways, our goals have been locking up the people we're afraid of, not the people we're mad at. But we do have real public safety challenges here. Because of those needs, in 2012, the then board was re-looking at this. There was a lot of discussion, and the cost was pretty eye-popping for the time. I'm telling you that now because it's really eye-popping now. Ultimately, the board then decided to try to figure out how to do some short-term fixes. It did not increase any capacity. It did not expand any further into the immediate area. You'll continue to see ongoing community efforts, as well as by 2015, the jail capacity reaches 151 people. There have been the renovations done and all that. Again, that was supposed to be temporary. Then, again, fast forward in 2019, because that was supposed to be temporary, the board went ahead and said, look, we got to have a study focus. We have to have better data and information to know what to do next. And over the next few years, we've continued to receive information. Because concrete is really expensive, because the needs have grown, and because of, one could argue, the fact that it's now 2024 as opposed to 2012, we are now facing some more real needs and challenges. We no longer can do Band-Aids. We can't find more spaces to be placing people. This is just a bit more of the background information. I know that Sheriff Soyka is going to talk a bit more about the Law Enforcement Center. As you can see, while it is 39 years old, it has been used 24/7. It gets a lot of hardware. There have been lots of efforts again to try to figure out how to best use space. And then I'm going to not say much more about that, Sheriff, because I know you're going to talk a bit more. We have had those additional minimum security beds added. We've had double bunking through most of the facility. We are currently paying about $1 million to go ahead and house additional inmates not in our jail. Part of that's workforce related, part of that's space. County Courthouse, you're going to hear more about this from Attorney Kendall as well. Again, this beautiful courthouse is beautiful, but it has long outlasted what our needs are. It's not designed for the kind of security that's needed or safety. The acoustics are really hard. We were sitting in the middle of this beautiful courtroom on Friday, and I found it hard to actually hear in the back. There was efforts made, but kind of like the state capitol, there's only so much you can do. They had to really go into the bowels of that, and it would be incredibly expensive and still not give us any more space to relook at that. So the last remodeling for that one was in '91. There are a few things that have been able to be held there, but not the kinds of trials that Janelle's going to talk about. The court facilities building, that was built on an existing foundation. We've gotten a fair amount of work out of it. There are particular needs that hopefully you can read on there, because I don't want to just read slides to you. But the amount of renovation that would need to be done to even just for those existing courtrooms is just insufficient. There's also only 2 courtrooms in that building that are big enough for criminal trials. There's significant work space issues as well. Even for remote hearings, you usually have several people in the same space, a judge with other staff that are working to make sure the paperwork gets signed. And I think this is you. So we're going to transition over to the needs and the safety of the current buildings.
Good evening, everyone. I am Sheriff Steve Soyka. The uniform probably gives it away. I'm going to stand out from the rest of the panel. So yes, so I guess I'll maybe preface this with, I'm hoping that several of you had the opportunity over the last few months to come and do our tours that we've been doing. We do have some upcoming tours again on October 3rd and 5th for the public. So if you're interested in seeing this stuff live, schedule yourself with our administrative assistant and we'll get you down to go on a tour. But the bottom line is that we've outgrown our building. Our staff is 3 times the size it was in 1983. We had about 22 deputies. We now have about 57 deputies. Jail staff obviously has grown over the years and just in general because of the population in our area. St. Cloud is considered a regional hub by the state of Minnesota, i.e. a lot of people come into St. Cloud for their shopping, eating, entertainment, and then they return home to other locations. So just talking about the building itself, these are several pictures. The one in the upper left is one of our jail control doors, actually, for the electronic controls. It is severely outdated. I will give Kevin and his crew in the back, they have MacGyvered stuff, found parts, made parts to keep it running. If that was to go down, those are about $500,000 a piece, so we have 2 of them, one on each side of the building for an east housing unit and a west housing unit. So we put in the budget every year with the commissioners $1 million to renovate that just in case it would happen to go down. It is obviously as old as the building and is, it's getting buttons pushed every day, and so it's seen its fair share of use. Other things that are still occurring in the jail, we still have wood cell doors. We've slowly been changing those out over the last few years with steel doors, but some of the wood doors are still in place, and obviously those pose a security risk and are quite loud when the inmates decide to bang on them compared to the metal ones, believe it or not. The generator and the HVAC system that's in the basement, I am not sure why it was designed that way to put it down in the basement, but we can't get to it if it goes out. It would involve taking out the north wall along 2nd Street and kind of sliding it in there. I wasn't I was in like junior high when they designed the building, so you can't blame me, but literally we've searched for a replacement generator in case ours goes out. The only one we can find, what I'm told, is from an old ship in Duluth from the shipping yards where they used to use these. So that's what we're looking at as far as aging infrastructure, as far as HVAC and stuff goes. Porcelain inmate toilets can be certainly broken and used as weapons compared to the metal ones, which we've been renovating and switching out. The courts holding area is that bottom middle area. Commissioner Clark was referencing our courts facilities building only has 2 secure courtrooms. And when we're talking about secure courtrooms, we're talking about the people that are on trial for like murders. We need to have a higher level of security for those people compared to 2 people suing each other in a civil trial over a car accident or something. So this is an area within the courts facility that probably when it was designed in 1991 was suffice, but we have a lot more defendants, and I know Janelle's going to talk about the court system and how busy we've become. And again, it's because our population has grown from what it used to be to where it's at now. And then lastly, medical and mental health. We are severely, I would say, outpaced by the number of inmates. About 65% of our inmates suffer from some mental illness of some form or another, diagnosed mental illness. So we have them on meds, and I'll tell you, once we get them on a structured program in like the facility where they have to take meds and stuff, they become sort of normalized, if that's the word to use, probably not, but we don't have enough bed space for that many inmates, and 65% of 130 people are needing some type of medical treatment, and that's just the mental side of things. There's also the medical side of things, which we're obviously responsible for when they're in our custody. So we are severely lacking space and the technology and the current needs of today. So this just kind of reiterates a little bit what's going on with the jail and the sheriff's office. Operationally, we're pretty much obsolete. For you that don't know about the sheriff's office, we're obviously housed right down here. We used to share the building with the St. Cloud Police Department. They got larger and larger and larger, and they outgrew their area in our building. And they moved to their new facility right kind of kitty corner from here. We were able to take some of that space, as was demonstrated in an earlier slide, and repurpose it, but we've outgrown that at this point. We also house dispatch. Dispatch takes about 240,000 calls a year, just in our area. So when you're talking about 250,000 phone calls, that's not just 911 calls, it's all kinds of calls. That's a lot of calls, and we're like the busiest out of the metro area dispatch center because of the size of our county. We dispatch for St. Cloud, which is full-time, and fire department, which is full-time. 18 other volunteer fire departments, 5 ambulance companies, and 14 other law enforcement agencies. So they've kind of outgrown their space. We had to take over the Emergency Operations Center, which used to be our training venue back in the day, and now we have to find a new location for that if we have departmental training, because we needed to spread them out and take over the EOC. Current standards as far as the jail goes, so that we are under the Department of Corrections. They do regulate us, they come and do an inspection. They could come and close us down at any moment if they wanted to. They do come and do a inspection, and they typically will kind of give us a slide on closing us down, but they have highly suggested in several letters that we need to start looking at a new facility, something that's more technologically advanced, something that has better security and can house the number of inmates we need to do. Obviously, a jail is expensive to maintain. Nobody wants to build a jail. I'm sure everybody'd rather build schools or parks or something, but the reality is that society, unfortunately, still has bad actors in it, and we do need a jail. You know, the hope would be that we build a jail that's, you know, technologically advanced, security, but also helps maybe combat some recidivism, offers some more programming than what we're allowed to do right now, and more mental and medical, you know, space so that we can treat those people that need to have that type of atmosphere. So the jail is small. We have, as of this morning, we had 30 inmates housed in other jails. I will tell you as the sheriff that nothing drives me more nuts than our county paying for other counties to run their jail and pay their staff than when we could have them in our facility. Commissioner Clark did hit on that. Some of it is staffing related. It's hard to get people in this industry, and DOC has standards as far as how many inmates to correctional staff ratios there are. And if we can't meet those, we need to house people elsewhere. It's either that or we also stand the chance of a security or safety risk if we're a little bit outnumbered. So the jail is small as far as that goes. There are also a lot more classifications now than there used to be. I think, what is there, like 8 or 9, Mark, different classifications. And what that means is somebody comes in, and on the simplest form, it's they're a blood gang member and they can't be by any Crip gang members. We have to go through that. We have a process, actually, booking, where we have to ask people these type of questions and classify them where they need to go. And when you have 9 classifications and only 4 housing units, it becomes kind of tricky. So as far as the courthouse, you know, I will tell you that from our study, and this will probably be talked about by Janelle, but we have 9 judges. We have the caseload of 10 judges in Stearns County. I know they bring in a visiting judge quite frequently, and he works out of, or she works out of a conference room. We don't have chambers for them. If they were going to be permanently housed here, we have no more judges' chambers. And when you're talking to judges' chambers, you're talking obviously their office, but their administrative assistant office, their typesetter, those type of things. So, you know, the courthouse is seen about as much max capacity as far as caseload goes. Again, Janelle will probably talk about jury trials and how many jurors show up on a Monday or Tuesday, and we try to squeeze them into a room, hoping that you know, they get picked for a jury. And then the courthouse isn't meeting the safety needs. As discussed earlier, there's 2 secure courtrooms. The old courthouse, while it is ornate and has its place, and I can see some things that could occur with the old courthouse, The judges have to, if they're gonna leave their courtroom to go to their chambers, they have to walk out in the main hallway. Right, sometimes by inmate families, those type of things. We don't have back hallways, we don't have security perimeters. So the old courthouse is kind of obsolete for doing any kind of secure type of court. And so we have to resort to the court's facility. Well, when you only have 2 courtrooms that you can do a jury trial, say a murder going on, and we have 5 or 6 of those in a week, it gets a little bit tricky, and we have to have our court administrator really do some jockeying around. And I think I'll be turning that over to, is it you, Janelle?
Thank you. So the sheriff and I have been in this together since he was a baby cop and I was a baby lawyer. And I remember literally in this room in 2002 when I was first elected, having a chance to talk to you about what we saw for the criminal justice system. And right after I was elected in 2003, then County Administrator George Rindeloff came and found me coming out of court, and he said, we have this new committee, our jail is full, and we need to figure out how to get people out of the jail. And I said, I don't think that's why they elected me. I literally looked at him and said, what do you mean? And he said, well, we've got people coming in from the National Institute of Corrections that want to talk about how we use our jail. And that was where we started describing it as the jail being for people we are afraid of, not people we're angry with. There's more than one way to change people's behavior. There's more than one way to get control of criminal behavior. The jail is a very, very expensive way to do it, but the jail is the way that we have to do it with people who are real life public safety risks. And part of my job and the sheriff's job is figuring out which is which. Which are the ones that we can deal with because they're drug addicted, because they're mentally ill, and which are just plain mean and are gonna break into your house and hurt you. So deciding which is part of what we do. And that's what we've been doing with this Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee since 2003. Again, I was brand newly elected, and the people that we had in the room were not only law enforcement, but Joe Custridge from the jail taught me about what really goes on in the jail when you're actually working with these people on a day-to-day basis. We had social workers there, we had teachers there, we had the judges there, we had the public defenders there. Everybody in the court system to really look at what's going on within that jail and each and every human being in there, and is that really where they need to be, and let's make sure that we're right. We saved you 15 years. That was 2003. As you saw on the slide, 2019 was the next time that we had a serious conversation about building a bigger jail. And here's how we did it. What are we gonna do with these people if they're not in jail? Well, at that time, would you believe? We had a lot of people in the jail at that time that had cases with, might have been with the city attorney, might have been with the Painesville city attorney, might have been with my office. And they would be hauled back and forth 3 different times to 3 different courtrooms and 3 different judges. Couldn't we just get all those cases on that one person in front of one judge? That saved us a lot of time and effort. And it saved us a lot of the use of the jail and hauling people back and forth. So we saved you some time and money there. Then we looked at, once they're convicted, once a Stearns County jury says guilty, and we're gonna go to sentencing, and we know that person is gonna go to prison, not jail, okay? Jail's down here where you cool your jets and you spend the weekend if you get a DWI. Prison's the big house where we lock you up, you don't go home for Thanksgiving, you don't get out to go to work. If we have people who have been convicted of murder, of sexual assault, of assaults with a gun, you're going to prison. Why leave them sitting in the Stearns County Jail when they could be getting into prison and actually get programming in prison that's not available in a jail? The jail is supposed to be a more short-term facility. People aren't supposed to be there for more than a year. So we completely changed the way that as soon as a jury came in and convicted someone, if they were gonna go to jail anyway, we actually got the public defenders on board with that. And so let's get those people out of here, out of the bed here, let's get them to the prison, we can start their programming, their families can come to visit them, let's move on. That saved you a lot of jail beds because there were a lot of people that were sitting there post-trial before they got sentenced. And transferring jail, again, getting them after conviction, that actually involved getting the Department of Corrections on board. They know that Stearns County did that. They know that we reached out to the state to work with them. Candidly, they would rather have those people earlier as well. So all of these things were not just me or the sheriff or any one person doing it. We all looked at this systemically because we knew the day that we had to turn to bricks and mortar was gonna be a big one. And we knew that we were gonna have this conversation with the taxpayers about why that was necessary. In terms of changing offender behavior through methods other than incarceration, that's called drug court. That's called domestic violence court. That's called our mental health court, where we actually look at our veterans and see if what's going on with them really causes them to be a public safety risk. Because a lot of times it doesn't. A lot of times the VA can help us out. Another partner in this process, the VA, of how can we get people out of the Stearns County Jail if they really don't need to be there. And being very intentional about how we use that jail. If you're in the jail now for more than a weekend, if you look at, and it's public information who's in that jail, go look at what they're charged with. Go look at what the bail is that's set. These are not people who are shoplifting or got their first DWI. Those people are gonna sit in there until they get bail, conditions of release. They're gonna be in and out of there in a weekend. The people who are taking up that space, and more unfortunately, there are more and more of those people, are in there for violent crimes. Those are weapons crimes. Those are not even drug dealers unless they're big time drug dealers. These are person crimes and these are violent felons. So these are not people that don't need to be there. And we spent 15 years making sure that we got that right. Uh-oh, what did I do? How do I get it to move on? I bet I can find next. Arrow buttons, the sheriff says, yeah, come on, Janelle, figure it out. So this is something we've heard a lot about in this process of the courthouse. You don't need a bigger courthouse, the courthouse is empty. Old people. Those people who are harming people and shooting people and stabbing people, we had 10 child sex abuse cases that we tried to juries last year alone. The cases that we are trying to juries are very seldom DWIs or property crimes or even drug crimes. Again, the people who are in the jail are the people that are in there for person crimes and violent crimes. And those are the people who are most likely to want a trial. By definition, if this is a person crime, the way I have to prove that to you as a jury beyond a reasonable doubt is those people have to come in and testify. So these are not cases that you can prove with the cop being stone cold sober, pulling somebody over. We have to put children on the witness stand, we have to put victims on the witness stand. And the reason that we have more of those kind of trials is because they're kind of betting on that they're not gonna show up. And that if they show up, they're not gonna be able to testify about the horrible things that happened to them in front of the person who did it for them. It's not a mystical, magical thing as to what kind of trials we have and why that is. So the things that we are now doing on Zoom, some of those things we were doing on Zoom pre-COVID, because rather than having some kid from St. Cloud State who got a minor consumption ticket, but who lives in International Falls, come all the way back here to pay his minor consumption ticket, can't we just do that by, it used to be called ITV? Isn't there a better way to do this, to get these cases resolved and out of the court system? Those people aren't going to jail. The people that we're doing the Zoom hearings on are in a major felony case. The first hearing is, here's what you're charged with, you understand? Second hearing is, here's everything I know about you. You got it all? And the third hearing is, do you want to litigate about that or do you want to plead guilty? The first 3 hearings are literally checkbox. And there used to be hundreds and hundreds of people that came through those doors every week to do those hearings in person. And now we do them on Zoom and we take this much time getting that many hearings done. What we need those courtrooms for are not the checkbox hearings. Do you know what you're charged with? Do you have everything that we know about you? And do you want to litigate or not? Those are things that we are saving you a whole bunch of money, and we have done for years. During COVID, we had to, okay? We had to, there was no choice. But we did continue to have jury trials in this county. I can tell you from my colleagues in other counties that they couldn't have jury trials because people wouldn't come. You came. You came. We had a bunch of trials during COVID. We've been able to figure out ways to get the work done even when it wasn't easy. So the people that you're not seeing streaming into those courthouses on Mondays and Tuesdays around the state are the ones that are just having what we call the checkbox hearings. They need to understand what they're doing. They're important hearings. They're represented by attorneys, but people don't need to be physically present to get that done. What we need to be physically present for is those people who are in the jail. We've talked about who they are, and those are the ones who are most likely to want to litigate. And okay, that's what you pay us to do. That's what your tax dollars go for, is preparing trials and having trials for the persons who need to do that in person. So the low-level property and traffic crimes, a DWI, chances that you actually physically have to appear in court to plead guilty to a DWI and figure out what your treatment plan's gonna be, get your fine paid. We do not need to take you away from your day job or make you come from across the state to get that done. We get that done very quickly and efficiently now. If something's not gonna be contested, some of those, on those serious crimes, we still need you to stand in front of a district court judge and have a come to Jesus moment, okay? Sometimes doing it by Zoom is not, even though it's faster and it's quicker, it's not the right way to do it. And the Supreme Court just changed the rules on those hearings that are gonna come up, we call them OPS hearings, Omnibus Pretrial Settlement Conferences, are gonna be presumed back in person. Because sometimes you just need to have a come to Jesus moment with another human being in front of you and understand what you did here. And understand that you're gonna meet with your probation agent in person. We're gonna do a pre-sentence investigation. We're gonna decide what comes next. That needs to happen in person, and the Supreme Court just changed those rules to make even more of those things come in person than they have been in the past. So some cases can be done remotely, but some can't. And the contested hearings, the things, was this a legal search? Was it a legal statement? Do you have probable cause to even go forward? Is this witness competent to testify? Is this person mentally ill and shouldn't even be standing here? Should this person be tried as an adult or not? All of those are in person, and those are exactly the same as they have been all along. Now, there are not as many of those as there are those checkbox hearings. So again, you used to see the crowds of people, you used to see them lined up. That's why they're not there, because those are the cases that we can deal with quickly. But these other cases of the people who are primarily those who are in the jail, on average, if the jail was separate from the courthouse, a real big issue for me, we would have 25 of those people who are in the jail, violent felons, hauled back and forth from the jail to the courthouse, on average 25 times a week. That'll cost you about $2 million a year in tax dollars. That's tax dollars, because that's transport vehicles, that's jail staff, that's having a place to hold violent felons at the jail and at the courthouse if the two are not in the same place. We thought about these things, we've done the math, we figured it out. And the ones that are gonna end up again in those in-person hearings are those people. So that's one of the things for me as a county attorney, that I don't want those people hauled through your town back and forth while we're getting those cases resolved, because those are the ones that go to trial. They just are, because they're going to prison for a long time. So of course we're having a trial, that's fine, that's what you pay me to do. So right now, as the sheriff said, we have 2 felony courtrooms where we can try an in-custody defendant, 2. Exactly none in the courthouse, because why? There's one hallway in that 100-year-old building, and I see Dennis playing, you tried how many of these cases there? You're gonna have the defendant, the judge, the family of the defendant, the victim, the family of the victim, and all the witnesses have exactly one hallway. The judges will tell you about, even in the cases that they have over there now on child custody cases and really icky divorce cases that end up going to trial, they have to go back to their chambers by going by the family whose child they just took away. Not awesome in modern times. 100 years ago, people respected the role. 50 years ago, that went okay. People don't respect it anymore. It's different, and I think any of you who are alive right now understand that things are different out there. So when we talk about security, the idea that somebody would actually come up over the bench, that somebody would, when they're walking by in the hallway, actually lay hands on one of my judges, the sheriff and I don't even want to think about that. But that's why we don't have in custody violent offender cases in the old courthouse, because that's just how it's built and you can't change that. So we have 2 courtrooms and court facilities upstairs are the only ones we can use. During COVID, we did build a 3rd in the basement of the administration center because we could. Kevin did a phenomenal job using what we had to work with to build that, but the exact same security issues exist down there. We just had to do it, because we had to have a courtroom big enough to continue to have felony jury trials. So we built it down there. It still gets scheduled some days, but it has basically the same security concerns down there because it's built in a building that wasn't built to have that kind of security as the courthouse. So we do have that, and we have used it, and we still continue to schedule things down there, but not the in-custody violent felony offenders. So that's where our criminal jury courtrooms are, because if you walk in there, and if you guys went to the 100-year anniversary thing, how cool was that? We thought there'd be like 50 people, and hundreds of people came. I can't tell you as an elected official how important that was to me. And to see that people care, and that people in this community understand public safety, you understand what we're trying to do, and what I'm trying to explain to you is I'm not wasting your money doing it. I'm not. If we could do this in the place we're in now, how awesome would that be? But what you've got there is just not built for modern society and the criminals that we're dealing with now, and the way that people deal with the justice system. It just, unfortunately not. And right now, because we only have so many courtrooms, when we're trying those 2 courtrooms with the contested things, the civil trials, because I went to the Bar Association and said, boys and girls who are doing private cases, how long does it take you to get a trial date on a malpractice case? Between 2 and 3 years. Years. Because their cases are behind those violent felons that come out of my office. So they're just having to wait, and they would appreciate having more space. Which one's here? Ta-da! This shows you how many, a clearance rate is for every case we put into the criminal justice system in a year, how many come out. And we were, when we did this, we were at 99%. That means for every 100 cases that go in, 99 go out in a year. Because I can tell you to get a homicide to trial takes more than a year, usually. Not always, it's been going better lately, just because we've had people that demanded speedy trials. If you demand a speedy trial, that means your trial jumps in front of everybody else. So when you have people that demand speedy trials, then other cases just have to wait longer. But this is actually public information. You can go on the Minnesota Supreme Court website and you can look at clearance rates. You can look at exactly what's happening in your county. So don't take my word for it. It's public information to see how we're handling our cases. And let's see if I can do it one more time. And here's how many of you we called last year. Again, public information. 7,200 people got a jury summons. 2,200 of you came, and if you came on the day that we had 3 jury trials, we lined you up bleacher style on the steps in the historic courthouse. If any of you got to come on one of the days that we had multiple trials in a week. Our record is 5 trials at the same time. 3 is not all that uncommon. And I know a number of times last year that we actually had, because in the jury gathering room that we have, 500 and some people actually served on juries. But 2,200 got called in, because how many of you have been on a jury panel, you got called in and then you got sent home because the guy pled guilty? Yeah, because you showed up. Because you came and so did the victim. And then that's how cases resolve. And that's just how it works, because everybody's entitled to a trial. We can't make that happen faster. The things that we can make happen faster, we are making happen faster, and we've been doing that since 2003. There are other things that just plain take time and space, and that's what the Constitution requires. And if they want a trial, by God, we're going to give them a trial. And we need the jurors to be able to have a place. It doesn't have to be a fancy place. I'm not looking for Cadillac, okay? I'm looking for a place that we can call in, put a child sex abuse witness on the stand, maybe with that beautiful little dog we've got now. And that the juries will come and we can get the criminal justice work done. We're just not making this up, that this is some sort of thing that isn't really necessary, and what we're really going to do with it. It's a lot easier to tour the sheriff's jail than it is to come to the courthouse, because you don't know which day it's all really going to go down, because a lot of times these people do plead guilty at the last moment. But when they don't, the court administrator said you can't bluff that you're going to have a trial space available. You just can't bluff. If we've got a bunch of trials scheduled, we got to be ready to rock and roll on every one of them that's scheduled that day. And again, sometimes there are as many as 5, and sometimes all 5 of them plead guilty that morning, and sometimes 3 of them don't, and we roll it all at the same time. So I know it doesn't look like that every day, but this is just how the system works, and everybody's entitled to a trial. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Happy to take questions at the end.
Thank you. Hopefully from what you've heard so far, you can understand that we operate as efficiently as possible within the facilities that we have, and that it's a very busy, high volume system. And it is a system. The components that we're talking about tonight are interdependent. If one of them begins to slow down, the whole system is going to slow down. Also, from all of that information, I hope that you can come to the conclusion, as the policymakers did and everybody involved in this process came to the conclusion that yes, we need new facilities. We need new facilities to replace the old worn out facilities that would be a waste of money to put money into, and we need more space. And so when the board came to that conclusion, we began to look at what should we build and how should we, and where should we build it. And we've had 2 independent studies take a look at all of this, and the most recent, and both of them really came to some very much the same conclusions. And so we looked at whether we could build downtown, could we split operations and maybe use some of the facilities downtown, or should we go to an undeveloped site or a greenfield site and start anew. And you can see up here that the downtown site became very expensive, a very long-term process, construction and planning process, because we would have to do so many things in a constrained site. We would have to purchase more land downtown, even to the point where we would need the post office, which literally would take an act of Congress to move or have them find new facilities. And just really the time frame of all that, the cost of property downtown, you can see it was in excess of $400 million, which is a very large number. And we wouldn't be able to fund that with the sales tax alone. We would have to supplement that with property tax dollars based on the approval we have from the legislator. And so and frankly, many of us wanted to build downtown and stay downtown for a number of reasons. But just looking at the cost, that really wasn't a very good option. And then we said, well, can we split things up? And as I said, this is a system, and these components are interdependent on one another. And if you start pulling them apart, you're going to have some great inefficiencies and greater operating costs. So the cost to split was comparable to the greenfield site option, but it would require us to be moving people back and forth from the court system to the jail system, and that would be in our estimation. And I think it's a conservative estimate because the only thing we took into consideration was how much it would cost to transport inmates. It didn't take into consideration the other inefficiencies it would create by pulling apart the components. So we said that would cost at least $2 million a year, which again, we would not be able to fund that with the sales tax. We would have to fund that with our regular operating budget, which would be property tax dollars. So the option that looked best to the county board and to most of us involved was to go to an undeveloped site and build the facility somewhere else. And that, as you can see, really shortens the construction time. It allows us to build everything on one site, everything that we need to put on one floor, we can put on one floor for greater efficiencies. And of course, the whole thing can be paid for through the property or through the sales tax. And the beauty of the sales tax is really that it's a regional funding mechanism for a facility that really serves the region. We know that up to 50% of the people in the system, the criminal justice system, whether being arrested or being held in the jail or going through the court system, are not Stearns County residents. We also know, and you'll hear this from Randy, we also know that through a study by the University of Minnesota Extension, that because we're a regional center, more than 50% of that sales tax will be paid by non-Stearns County residents. So there's a fairness in the funding mechanism that we're proposing here. And that's what the county board is looking at, particularly when they were looking at options. They want to be able to fund this with the sales tax because it's a regional way to fund it, not with the property tax. So, in the board, again, they had two independent studies that really helped us come to these conclusions. But they took action not too long ago to go into design. And so what the board has done is they said, okay, we need to design this so it will serve us for years to come. And those independent studies have said the number of jail beds we need, how many courtrooms that we will need and the size of the law enforcement center, those kinds of things. And so currently we are under schematic design to design the whole facility with all the components that are necessary into one facility on one site. And as I was talking about the financing, 2 sessions ago, legislative sessions ago, we went to the legislature and got approval to use the sales tax if it's approved at a referendum. And that's what Randy's going to talk to us about. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, as Mike talked about, we contracted with the University of Minnesota. They do studies on sales tax. And their conclusion, or what we wanted them to tell us is, 1, how much sales tax should we collect? And 2, who's paying the sales tax, residents versus non-residents. So the study came back and said that 55% of the sales tax collected, because we're a regional center, would come from non-residents and 45% non-residents. The cost to a household, and a household is 2.5 people, would be $85, and then the $185 is if we did this property with, or this project with property tax, and I'll kind of get into that a little bit more later on here. So, okay, so this is where sales tax is currently in the area. The right 2 slides, or 2 boxes, are the St. Cloud ones. So currently, you can see Avon, St. Augustus, St. Cloud, you're at 7.625. If this would pass, you'd be at 8%. And for those residents in Benton and Sherburne County that's still part of St. Cloud, you're at 7.875%. And of course, that won't change at all. So right now, Stearns County is 0.25% less. If this passed, you'd be 1/8% higher. So then you can see where the other parts of the county are. So this is other regional centers and where their sales tax currently is at. So Rochester's at 8.125, Bemidji 8.5, Duluth 8.875. If this was to pass, St. Cloud, as we just mentioned, would be at 8%, and Lake Park would be at 8.5. So we'd still be lower in St. Cloud, and then Lake Park would be about in the middle. Okay, so on the property tax, so if it doesn't pass, to do the project, we require a $17.5 million levy to pay the debt service. The box on the left here kind of goes through the different property types and how the property tax to pay the $17.5 million debt service would be. The one highlighted in yellow is the average property value. And so at that, you can see the 187 would be the price there. And of course, that'd be over 30 years, similar to the sales tax also. So I know this was up at the beginning of the session, showing the question. So this is the actual question. I guess towards the bottom, I want to make a point that it says, in effect, for up to 30 years or until the project is paid for, whatever comes first. So the projections is we're going to be pretty close. We're pretty conservative in those projections, so I'm anticipating it won't last that long. And the other part, a question we've had in the past is, well, can this be extended? And no, this cannot be extended. This is not like the environmental sales tax that you see. This is a project-specific request, so once project's done, there's no extension, that's it. And then some election information. Of course, election day is November 5th. Absentee balloting will start this Friday, September 20th. You can vote at Lake George Municipal Complex or at the Service Center, and both those locations have ballots for the entire county. So wherever you live in the county, they'll have those ballots for you. And then you can vote by mail also. That open mic.
Thanks, Randy. Thanks to the league for sponsoring this tonight. It's been a good way to get word out. We are making a lot of efforts to get word out and answer questions on this project. We have over 20 community meetings scheduled throughout the county. Some of those are open houses, so we'll have information available, and people just come in and talk to the people that are involved in the project and get questions answered. A handful, or quite a few of them will also have a presentation and then a question and answer period. We, of course, we're using social media and we're using print materials. We're going to do a mailing. The most recent county newsletter went out. I don't know if it's hit everybody's mailboxes yet, but it will very soon. The bulk of that is dedicated to information on this project. And if you want to see pretty much everything that we've been up to with this project, you can go to the website and you can see all the background and really the studies. You can see really everything that a pretty comprehensive look at the project. And so feel free to do that. Hopefully you will. I think we'll try to get closed down here now. I think there's a few key points, at least, that I would want to make to emphasize. And we're talking about critical public safety infrastructure here. Critical public safety infrastructure to keep all of us safe. And it needs replacement and it needs to be larger. And so that's why we're embarking on this. And in addition, you also heard that these are mandated services. Everything that is within these facilities, we are required to provide those services. To the point where you heard, in the jail, we actually are regulated by the state, we are inspected by the state, we're licensed by the state. They can take that license away, they can downgrade that license. A lot of things that would be not good for Stearns County could happen if we do not have a jail that meets current standards. The courts, we're required by law to provide adequate facilities. And then all of the other services that are within these facilities are services that we are required to provide. And so that's why it says that in the ballot question. We want to remind people that there's choices about the way we do something, but we must do these services. And again, this is a system. The components of this make up the criminal justice system. And if we start pulling them apart or one gets inefficient, we're going to slow down the whole system. And we have an opportunity here to fix these problems with a regional sales tax, which makes sense because it's a regional facility. More than half the people that are in the system are not Stearns County residents, and more than half of the revenues, if paid for through a sales tax, will be paid for by non-residents. And I think that concludes the presentation, and we are ready to stand for questions.
Thank you, all of the presenters. We have a number of questions here. We'll get through as many as we have time for. We hope that we'll be able to answer all of the questions, but we do want to end this by 8:15 at the absolute latest. So here is the first question, and I'm going to give a second mic to the presenters here, and they can choose who gets to answer based on the question. So, the first question is, will there be increased operating costs at the new facilities?
I can. Yep.
So with a new facility, the way the new facilities are designed, there will be a little bit of an increase, obviously, to operate, but in all reality, per shift, all we have to basically do is add one more officer than what we have right now. Again, we're using what they call direct supervision, where a correctional officer is in the unit with those particular inmates for their shift. We're gonna go to a kind of a mix of direct and indirect. With indirect, you can, your span of control is a little bit larger. Operationally, we're growing in size. We did a dispatch staffing study that says we need to add about 15 dispatchers to keep up with call load over the next 5 to 6 years. So yes, there's gonna be some operational costs. I would have to say on the flip side of that, you saw a picture of a ship's generator basically on there. With new technology, new ways of doing stuff, right now, for instance, just simple example, in our sheriff's office, we enter a room, we have to turn on the light switch like most of you. If we leave a room, we have to remember to turn that light switch off. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. We can go to a system where they just automatically come off, saving some, costs there. I think we figured out it's $50,000 to $60,000 a year just energy costs that could be saved. That doesn't sound like much, but over 30, 40 years that can add up. So there will be some operational costs from a staffing standpoint, but I think the building would be more efficient and run a lot cleaner and at a cost. So. Well, yeah, I guess, yes, you're right. So obviously having a bigger facility, we can bring those 30 inmates that we have in other facilities back. And that obviously does cost money to the taxpayers. Right now, jails charge $75 a night for an inmate, and when you have 30 inmates in another facility, times 30 days, times sometimes 6, 7 months, you can see how that adds up. So that's all cost savings, I guess, that would come back to us in the scheme of things. We still have to feed those inmates, we still have to watch them, so that there's some staff time and staff costs. There is some costs related to possibly medical and mental, issues that these people might be having, but that is all stuff that we have to provide. We don't have a choice. We can't let somebody have a medical condition and not treat it and not have to pay for that.
Okay, thank you. This next question was submitted by several people. What will the old facilities be used for? Specifically, what are the plans for our historic courthouse?
We have in the current budget to demolish the building, not the historic courthouse, but the law enforcement center, jail, and the court facility. And we've had some discussions with the city about redevelopment of that area. The city has some plans and thoughts about revitalizing downtown and wants to increase people that live downtown, increase housing downtown. And so we've been talking to the city about how we might work together to redevelop that property. So we don't know exactly what we will do with the historic courthouse, but we certainly won't tear it down. But I think there's some realistic reuses for that building.
And that's what we talked about, an event center, would have been cool if we could put the history museum in there, wouldn't it?
Yes.
How beautiful that would be, but it will depend, there's no heating or air conditioning in that building independently. The heating and air conditioning in that 100-year-old building comes from the jail. So, and it's also on the National Register, so there are a whole bunch of rules and regulations about the use of that building, and that's why if we seem kind of circumspect about it, somebody's gonna have to figure out how to heat and air condition it once the jail is gone, so that that land can be used for other things. So that's part of there's a lot of cool things we could do with it, but what people will do with it, but it's not going anywhere, and that's on the National Register again, so that is absolutely protected.
The only thing I'd add on that is, like other things, like the Old Tech High School, there's a lot of conversation, brainstorming, trying to figure out what makes sense, working together with the city. And I should have said at the beginning, we've got some city council members here, some past city council members, and some candidates here, so really glad you're all here. But between that or whether or not, the History Center could do something, there are some different options, but that will be something that we need to figure out together.
Okay, the next question. Earlier estimates of the cost of this was in the $90 million range. Why does the ballot question say up to $325 million? Where is all the extra cost coming from?
Well, that was quite some time ago for one thing, so inflation has quickly added that up, or made that more costly. I don't know, I wasn't involved when those earlier cost estimates were made, but yeah.
The previous study, or one of the previous studies done about 12 years ago, the cost on that was $155 million. So at that point, that's when the board decided to do a bunch of remodeling and getting more useful life out of the current facility, and that was successful, right? We got some more time out of it, but I think we only made, to be honest, useful life.
The only thing I would add to all that is, you gotta remember that a jail is built differently than like say even this library. You're using probably twice as much rebar, twice as much cement. It's all supplies, and that isn't cheap anymore, because you want it to withstand. We have to withstand tornadoes. We have to, unfortunately, in this day and age, withstand attacks on our facilities, which we've seen. So things do cost more than that original study, and it's just built differently. It's a place that literally runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365, with garage doors going up and down, doors going in and slamming and shutting, and lights off and on, and there's people in there 24 hours a day, whether it's dispatch or jail staff. So it has to be built to standards, it has to be built to DOC standards, and it has to be built to last, and that's probably a little bit of the reason for an increased cost. And I think what Randy had referred to was only jail components, or jail at the time. Now we're talking about some courts and county attorneys, so there's some more in there, so. I guess it was everything.
It was everything, and it was looking at downtown, and it was smaller, and one of the things, Sheriff, you might even want to talk about a little bit more, that was also believing that we were gonna be still having at least some spaces that were multi-story on a jail, which costs more to operate than if we have the pods that were, the jail staff is able to be seeing direct sight about what's going on. So if somebody's got more questions about that. I will tell you that even back in 21, when we started relooking at this, some of what was brought in front of us really was eye-popping. And so part of this is, if we can get your approval in doing this with the sales tax, let's say it was 300 million, and roughly that means you would be paying, or our residents would be paying, roughly about 145 million. That's still a lot, but that's a lot better than the full thing, which is what property taxes are. And as the architects and others were showing us what it could look like in the future, it's really hard out there trying to figure out, can you stage it? Can you do this in different ways? But between the cost of the safety concerns of bringing people back and forth, among other things, it starts getting a lot more on the levy. So at this point, I mean, the goal would be to be keeping it under, trying to figure out how to reduce those costs, but getting the best value for the dollar, while we're trying to make sure we're not doing what the board did 12 years ago, which is basically postpone.
Okay, the next question. What is the impact on an already struggling downtown? And what is being planned regarding the impact on downtown?
Well, several of you know this. This has been, I personally, just very painful. And I know I'm not alone looking down the row here. The belief had been that we could do it downtown. There was some way to do it in a cost-effective way. And I have to admit, several of us have a healthy degree of cynicism or skepticism when somebody starts telling you how much it's going to cost to acquire property, among other things. So you saw that extra $100 million up there. Let's say it's 50 million. Let's say it's 30 million. It still ends up being a lot. So in some ways, it really is about the money. And I think Congressman Emmer and both of our senators would work hard to help us with the post office, but then the post office needs a new site, and then that needs to get paid for. And we have to, look at the Howie's block and what is now Taco Villa, and like, it's a lot of property that needs to be taken, and as the city council, and mayor are looking at how do you revitalize our current footprint is not actually all that big. And as Mayor Kleist has pointed out several times, the jail is not an economic development tool, which is true. It is not. But, so some of those spaces, hopefully much sooner rather than later, yeah, I'm looking at you, Karen, and yes, I'm looking at you, Mike, that we are able to come up with some good ways that really will make a difference. At one point, tongue in cheek, when I was in the Senate, I carried a bill to try to make sure that you have all of St. Cloud in the same county. We can't even go across the river because there's 2 different counties across there. But, so pragmatically, you know, what we're really talking about is some of the legal folks that are there, and that could be problematic. We also know a whole lot of downtown is working from home now. There's not as many people that are working in their offices. So we'll work together to be trying to, you know, be good partners and stewards with this. Ultimately, our obligation is to try to figure out how to do what we're required to do in the most cost-effective and thoughtful way. And that's what we're trying to do. Hopefully, again, in partnership with the city. I'm sorry, and I do still have a lot of pain. I'm almost over it.
Yeah, I know. You wanted me to be able to say that.
Okay, next question. Is there room at the Wake Park Service Center to make office space for county staff to keep the cost down for the new Justice Center?
There is some extra space at the service center, no doubt. But again, as we all, I think, try to express, that if you start separating out the components of this system, we're going to lose the efficiencies that we have by keeping them all together today. That's one consideration. And there's not that much space left at the service center. Some of the space that we've had available to us after COVID, because our employees do work in a hybrid work environment, and many of them did already. Many of the social services people were really working out in the community anyway. But we've been able to do, as Janelle said, we created a temporary courtroom with some of our extra space downtown. We were able to expand our dispatches. The sheriff talked about how busy the dispatch is, how many calls they take. We were able to expand the space that they're in into what was emergency management into some of our spare space. We were able to bring the county extension out of leased space and put them into the service center, saving what we were previously paying in lease. So there are some advantages to some of the space that we've gained by working in a hybrid environment.
And I would just add that by state law, Janelle's office, my office, the county jail, and the courthouse have to be in the county seat, which is the city of St. Cloud. License Center West, which you're referring to, is actually in the city of Wake Park. So I'm not sure which staff we could put in License Center West, but you know, it would certainly be something we could always look at. But I'm not sure which staff we would put there, you know, to share that open space over there, because we have to have our offices in the county seat.
So I'm saying this tongue in cheek. At one point, a question was, so, do you think Wade Park would let St. Cloud have some of that land? Of course, the answer is no. That is actually Wade Park, right? But I just want you to know, we've thrown lots of stuff up. So lots and lots of stuff on the wall, and a number of things are not practical or advisable. But the point that the sheriff's making and Steve's making is a really important one. There's actually those two pieces. The efficiencies are together, because frankly, people get confused about where they're supposed to go now. So reducing that confusion, getting people in the right places, and then we don't have a choice. It has to be in the city of St. Cloud.
Okay. Why are there only 2 alternatives for voters? One to impose a sales tax of 0.3% to finance the Justice Center, and the second, property taxes will go up for homeowners of Stearns County.
Well, that's a good question. And the answer is that, as we've tried to express to to you and everybody that we've talked to about this is there is a great need. And we need to do something, and that something is what we're planning on doing. I think if the sales tax does not pass, obviously the county board's gonna take a step back and kind of reassess, but we're gonna do something. There is a great need for these new facilities, and so the best way to pay for it is through the sales tax, in our opinion. That's why we're kind of posing this as, how should we pay for it?
Actually, 12 years ago, in fairness to the then board, they didn't have that possibility. It was a big deal. The legislature gave us the authority to ask our residents for this. As a matter of fact, there's a moratorium on it now, and they're talking about trying to figure out what to do moving forward. They do recognize that paying for these mandated state requirements, right, the state mandates on property taxes is not the best way, not the fairest way to do it. And we are unique because of the fact that we have part of St. Cloud in those other counties, and because we have 9 counties around us. So we do have the opportunity, because of who all is using the facilities, to pay for it in that way. Again, I just want to go back to my saying, I wish, I'm not going to speak for our other board members, but the sticker shock with some of this has just been really hard to deal with. It's taken me personally almost 3 years to get there. But I will tell you that we have worked really hard to figure out how to go ahead and bring it to you. We could just make this decision based on levy, but that is not a good value. My mother-in-law was shopped during triple coupon time, and in a way it's kind of like that. We're trying to make sure that for those of you who live in Stearns County, that you are going to have the least burden on these required state services.
Okay, next question. To define the term mandate by the state of Minnesota, are they telling Stearns we need to build new?
Well, so when we say mandate, there's literally state law, there's statute numbers that indicate that we have to provide a county jail. Doesn't necessarily say you have to build new. We have a county jail, but we have nowhere to expand downtown. We're surrounded by streets, railroad tracks, and other businesses at this point, and going up is not an option. That poses a whole bunch of other stuff, but, so when you're talking mandated, yes, there's state statutes that cover a jail, emergency management has to be provided by the county. There's several things that you can certainly look up in the Minnesota Revisor, but that's what we're talking about. We're talking mandated.
Yeah, absolutely, and as we talked about earlier, in the jail particularly, we are regulated by the DOC, Department of Corrections, and they license us, and they can take that license away, or they can downgrade us, say you can only handle so many people, or they can do a number of things, and that has happened to counties. And we've been warned by the state about this for 15, 20 years, and if we had not been making some progress at planning that we are going to make some changes and have new facilities, they probably would have got a little more firm with us if they didn't see us making the plans. So it can happen, and it has happened to other counties. The court facilities, there's actually in the state law, I think it says that we need to provide adequate facilities, and we're being told by state officials that our facilities are not adequate. So that too could come to the point where we would get forced to build new facilities. So while nobody is saying that today, it could happen. And then the other services that we've talked about are indeed mandated. There is in state law that we will provide dispatch, we will provide emergency services, we will have a sheriff and a sheriff's office and dispatch, I think, and of course county attorney as well. The state says we're going to have a county attorney whether we like it or not. So that's what we're talking about when we say mandated. So it's not necessarily in all cases the facilities, but the services within them. The courts, yes, it is the facility that we need there.
While you're getting ready for the next question, I just want to acknowledge Representative Bernie Perryman's here. She was a great partner in helping us get this through. Yes, we should give her applause. We worked closely together on what the needs were and what the difference this would make for our Stearns County taxpayers. So just want to acknowledge that your work on this as well. Thank you.
Okay, it is 8:15. I'm going to ask one more question, and then I see we have lots of additional questions here, and I think I'm going to ask that after this next question, that the formal proceedings end, and if there are presenters willing to stay, they're not asked to stay, and may be able to ask them individually. But one more question, and this question is, the proposed jail will have over twice as many beds as our current. You said you are unable to staff the current jail. How are you going to staff the larger facility?
I'll hand the mic over to the sheriff for that question, but I want to tell you that, as you said, Ralph, there's more questions. And if you go to the county website and into the Justice Center page, there's a place that you can ask questions, and those will get to the appropriate person, and then we will answer those questions. So feel free to do that. You can call or email any of us too, and we will answer your questions. But you can go right to the website, and there's an email address there that you can ask questions.
I guess the bottom line with that question is recruitment, just continuing to recruit like we're doing now. I will say that from talking to other sheriffs and other people in public safety, believe it or not, a new facility does bring people to want to work for you. They don't want to come and work in a place that is falling down. We've had a couple of sewer leaks into our locker rooms. That's destroyed staff's property, and that word gets out, and that's just minor. But point is that when you have a new facility that does attract people, and we'll just continue to recruit. We're not that far off. We're only 5 openings right now for being fully staffed. County has, I'm gonna put Mike on the spot, has graciously, a couple years ago, overcomped us by 2 positions, but we've never gotten there. The closest we've gotten since, when I took over sheriff, we were 18 people short in jail, and we got within 2 of being short. COVID did knock the wind out of some people, and they ended up going into private industry, those type of things, but we are just 5 away from being fully staffed, and I'm happy to report that we have like 18 interviews on Thursday. I'm definitely a sheriff that will only hire quality people. We're not just gonna hire quantity. Granted, 18 people can come to an interview, but if they're not the type of people we want working for us, I'm not gonna put them in there with our other staff. So we're getting close. I'm hoping in the next year that we'll be fully staffed in the jail, and then we'll focus on our dispatch, which has a couple openings, and we're sitting good in patrol and sitting good with our support staff. So we're not far off from staffing. And what I had mentioned earlier is basically adding 1 person to each shift. That's about 6 staff members in all reality. Kitchen staff is a hired vendor, so that's not got anything to do with us. Medical is a hired vendor, so that doesn't have anything to do with us. That'll be the responsibility of them to come up with more staff if that's needed.
Thanks, Sheriff. I think I heard Captain Maslonkowski answer this similar question the other day. And if we open the jail, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but if we open the jail at 230 beds, what the sheriff is saying is true. I mean, we hardly need any more people because this facility will be 1 story rather than 2 and operates that much more efficiently. Mark?
That's correct.
He's nodding. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for coming on. First of all, I want to thank all of the presenters for their information, their clear and accurate information on what's going on and why they're doing what they're doing. And I want to thank you folks for coming. The League of Women Voters holds candidate forums that are coming up for various offices, city offices, state legislative offices, school board offices. The first one coming up is September 24th. That is a Tuesday. That will be for this District 742 School Board, and that will be at the District 742 offices in Wake Park. That starts at 7 o'clock. On September 26th, Thursday, that will be Legislative District 14 candidates. All candidates who have filed for office have been invited. That will be at the Whitney Senior Center in St. Cloud, and that will start at 6 o'clock because the Whitney Center closes by 8 o'clock. And there will be other ones as well. Please go to our website, lwvsca.org, to find more information. Thank you again.
Thank you.